This content is for kids.
It's not for kids.
Isn't that what I said?
No, it's not for kids. If you are 13 years or younger, this is not for you. Do I have to kill somebody in order to actually make that point across?
No, man, you don't have to kill
Wait
no
a
one.
second.
Oh, no.
When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
He likes movies, we like movies. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. I'd buy that for $1.
You know, it's been a long time since I've actually sat down and done a top 10. Of course, it's been a long time since I've had a release without a cattail involved. But a tale is a tale, nevertheless. And I'm going to go through my top 10 NES games. Now, this is going to be a series. I'm going to go through each system that I've actually beaten 10 games in. And we're just going to keep going until we get there. Some systems I will not be able to produce enough content in order to, well, say, hey, yeah, I've beaten 10 games in. And you'll be surprised at which ones that I actually, well, don't have in the series. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with the earliest one. Technically, my earliest is Commodore 64, but I don't even know if I beat any games on that system. I was too young. Much too young for that stuff to go along. So number 10. Crystallus. Crystallus is one of those action-adventure RPGs. Matter of fact, one of the earliest action RPGs out there that I would consider functional. You play this individual in this distant future. The world has been destroyed, you were frozen, and you've been brought back to save the world again, as people are about to make old mistakes and activate a bad machine. And that's just no good. So you have quite a bit of stuff that you can do. A lot of cool things you can explore, cool treasures you can find. You can do the traditional leveling up, building money to buy equipment. You can power up your weapons. You get 4 elemental swords, which shoot magic, which level up with items that you use. And as you go up in levels, you get stronger with the weapons and what they can do. Different weapons do different things, and different elements work on different monsters. To me, this has an excellent story. It does still hold up, and you don't need an NES to get a hold of this game today, because you can actually get it on the SNK collection for the Switch, which I do have it for. So that's a pretty awesome thing. Now, it's at number 10 because it is very hard, and it's kind of opaque, like many NES games were. Castlevania 2. To where you kind of had to have a Nintendo Power to do it at the time. I have it memorized at this point, so I can still beat the game, but taking it on fresh, I don't know if you could actually do it. It needs an update. I would love to see a good graphical and quality of life update on this game. I think it would make an excellent thing. Maybe like a Zelda, like, what is that one? Maybe sort of like a Zelda remake type thing. Maybe. Number 9. Monster Party. So let's talk Monster Party. So how do monsters have a party? Badly, apparently. This game is freaking insane. Now, Nintendo excelled at one thing when it came to the NES, and that's platformers. That was their bread and butter. There were other games that kind of got their start on the NES, but platformers ruled the day. And this was a combat platformer that saw you controlling this kid who meets this gargoyle, and they fuse together and go on this adventure in Monster World to save it. I know, sounds a little bit odd, doesn't it? Well, the oddity doesn't stop there. You go through various levels, strange platforming combat-oriented levels that eventually you can power up and become the gargoyle to do some damage, but mostly you play as the kid with his bat, fighting various monsters and baddies, including some very weird ones, like a shrimp. Yes, I do not lie. You fight a fried shrimp. Yeah. But it is a fun game. I really enjoy it. If you haven't checked it out, you should. It's not easily available, but, you know, there are ways in which you can check it out these days. But, of course, if you have a chance, you should check out the original Nintendo port. If you can't, well, I'm sure there's a ROM available somewhere. Number 8, Maniac Mansion. Maniac Mansion was one of the first adventure games, really, that was on console as opposed to, say, PC. But this was a PC port to the consoles, and probably one of my first experience with one of these games. If you're a computer gamer, you probably were already familiar with these games at the time. You're playing as this group of teenagers, and the lead one, Dave, his girlfriend, is captured by this evil doctor. And they just kind of went crazy after this meteor hit. So you go around, you got to get into the mansion, you got to confront the strange and weird stuff going on in the mansion, and eventually save the girlfriend and save the world. Or not. There are plenty of ways to nuke the house if you really want to do it that way. But there's a lot of endings to this game, and there's a lot of ways to beat it. Though you have to play as Dave, you also get to select 2 other characters, and each of these characters have unique things they can do, different endings they can trigger. It's really cool. Like, you can write a manuscript and send some of the villains, to movie school. You could do just a whole bunch of things. You can call the police on the meteor. It's just a fun game. Now, and this is one of those cases where the NES is actually a harder one to find than the PC port. And one of the sequels that LucasArts did, Day of the Tentacle, has this included upon it. So you can actually go to a computer and play the original game on it, which is probably the easiest way to do it, but there are ways to get the PC legally. And the PC port is probably the best, though there are other editions out there. But as far as things go, on an 8-bit console, they did an excellent job with this. I would still enjoy playing it. I would still do this today if I had a chance. Number 7, Kid Icarus. Kid Icarus was my second platforming game on the NES. The first one, of course, was going to be Super Mario Brothers. I mean, duh. But Kid Icarus brought a whole new dimension. You were able to do jumping. You were able to like Mario could do that. But you were able to shoot with arrows. You had various weapons that leveled up and some imaginative worlds and enemies to take out. This one had a lot of cool things going for it. I loved dealing with the crooked hagglers. I hated the item salesman, and of course, Eggplant Wizard will always live in infamy, if you know what I mean. But still, it's a very solid platformer. Still fun to this day. The 3DS version is probably the best. It's the definitive version. I want to say it is located on the Nintendo Virtual Console if you want to play it. So you can try it in its original glory on the big screen if you don't have the NES to play it. Excuse me. Number 6, Metroid. I mean, everybody's got to have a start. It's called Metroidvania for a reason, and this is the Metroid section of it, where essentially you play this individual who's sent down to a planet to fight space monsters, or space pirates, because they've managed to harness this critter that is very, very dangerous, and they're going to weaponize it. So you got to go down and you got to take out Mother Brain in order to save the universe. This is another one of those pretty cool platformy style dungeon crawlers where you go around, you explore, you unlock items, and as you unlock items, this unlocks other areas and so on. And of course you can break the game by doing things out of order if you know what to do. Bomb jump. I used to explore the heck out of this as a child, and I beat this several times, and it shocked us all. By the way, spoilers. If you don't know this, well, obviously you're probably not going to play these games. Where you find out that Samus is actually a woman.
Inconceivable!
I used to love to put in the Justin Bailey code and just play around as Samus without the suit. It was an excellent game and still is a decent playthrough to this day. It's a bit outdated, but you can get an updated version on the GBA called, well, Metroid. I want to say there's a Metroid game. I can't think of it, but there is an updated version of it on the GBA. Unfortunately, that's not easily available, but the original is easily available if you have a Switch with the online stuff, because it is on the Switch online in its original glory. Number 5, The Legend of Zelda. Again, you have to start somewhere. Legend of Zelda is probably one of the first great action-adventure games. Without this one, you could not have games like, say, Dark Souls. It's an exploration game. It's open world for the first time ever. You can go anywhere you want. You can take on the levels for the most part in different order. You can sequence break like mad in this game. You just got to go in. You got to take the Triforce piece that was burst into lots of different pieces, put together, fight Ganon, and save Princess Zelda. Pretty simple. The amount of customizations and item work in this game is amazing. Bombs, arrows, different types of arrows, the candle, the magic wand, the fact that they have creatures that eat the shields, that is just really cool. The definitive way, really there is no definitive way to play The Legend of Zelda, the original, but you can play it on the Switch, on the online store. So, I mean, it's online, just on the Nintendo Online. And it is worth a playthrough. If you haven't done it, you might want a guide, because the original way to do it is how I did it, which was go and set fire to every bush, to every piece of wall you need to put a bomb until you find every little secret in the game.
Hey, Kuno baby, the door.
Be silent, woman!
And that's what you're expected to do. But still, I like to think I found a good portion of the secrets out myself. But yes, it wasn't until I got a guide that I was able to find all of them. But I did manage to beat the game without looking at Nintendo Power, and I thought that was pretty cool. Number 4, Mega Man 2. The game that many people consider to be the definitive Mega Man game, even though I think there are 6 of them on the NES. 2 to me was right where Mega Man was its most fun. Now this one has a lot of nostalgia factor because a lot of times people will point to 3 because 3 really is where he had a lot of the extra stuff going on. Rush was a lot more compatible. You kind of had Rush-like prototypes in 2, but the game wasn't balls hard like the first game. Good lord. And 3 was almost easy. So 2 was kind of just right on the difficulty curve, and it really was a fun game. I love the Mega Man series. It needed a representation on this list. I probably could have put several of the others on this as well, but 2 is by far the best in my opinion. I love the bosses. I love the Dr. Wily fights, and for those who haven't played Mega Man, it's a platformer. Boy, Nintendo platformers. And you go around and you shoot with your gun, and you defeat these robot masters. And as you take on the robot masters and beat them, you can gain their power. And if you do it in the right order, you can actually go in and, well, more easily take out a robot monster. Like, let's say from the first game, you had Flame Man's shooter. Well, you could charge that up and shoot at Iceman and take his butt out, like, immediately. That's just a good example. So, if you haven't checked this out, you should check out the series. They do have the Mega Man collections for all the systems, every single one on digital and on physical. Though be wary, because the combined collections do not have them packaged separately. They only package the first game on the disc, which is stupid. I know, all those Mega Man games are so graphics intensive. But the first collection has Mega Man 2 on it. Alright, number 3. Number 3 is probably the number 1 for most people with an NES, and that is Super Mario Bros. 3. To me, this was the best Mario Bros. On the NES, and debatably one of the best Mario Bros. Games of all time when it comes to 2D Mario. This introduced a lot of cool things, like the maps, like the Koopalings, a lot of the different power-ups, like the raccoon tail, the Tanuki suit, the Hammer Brothers suit. These things were introduced in this game. I loved playing this. You could sequence break it like you could any of the Marios. You could use warp whistles as opposed to the warp zones. And this one goes back to the old school. I mean, the first one, you were rescuing the princess from Bowser. The second one was a drug trip, or an extremely excruciating hard retread of the first game, where you rescue the princess. But this time, you go in, you gotta defeat all of Bowser's kids, and then you gotta rescue the princess from Bowser at the end of it all. Easy enough. Again, amazing. I loved all the little mini games. I had the guide Nintendo Power had, to where you could look up the solutions to some of the puzzles, like the matching game, which you could easily break the game that way. And there was a one-up thing that you could do also at the first, like one of the first levels that could also near break the game. But I still love to play through it. You can play through it really easily as a quick playthrough, or you can take your time because it is on the Nintendo Online. And because they have Mario All-Stars, you can choose to either play it in the original flavor or you can play it in the 16-bit flavor. So, something to think about. Food for thought. Number 2. Dragon Quest 3, or Dragon Warrior 3, if you really want to be about that. But, this is by far one of my favorite Dragon Warrior games. I have not beaten a lot of the games in the series, so to be fair, I've only beaten the first 3, and I've beaten 7. So, I haven't really, gone. But I think the first 4 were on NES. I want to say 5 was on the SNES. 5 and 6 maybe. And then 7 was on the PlayStation. 8 was on the PlayStation 2. 9 was on the DS. And 10 never came here. It was an MMO. And then, of course, 11 is the most recent one. But 3 was amazing. It had a lot of open world exploration like 2 did, but it was a lot more fun. You had worthwhile companions instead of the useless ones you got in 2. And you had a big, wide world to explore. It was really fun. You got to pick your party. You could have party members of every class and just keep going around and changing out if you wanted to, if you're a glutton for punishment. They had a town building game. They had various secrets and treasures and a great story to go along with it. This was, and still is, my favorite Dragon Warrior game. Now, it's also easy to play because you can play it on phones and you can get these things downloaded on the Switch. I actually have a physical copy of the first 3 on the Switch, and my favorite part about it is they are going to do a 3D-ish style 8-bit remaster of the first 3 games, and I am psyched. I want to play this game again. I don't so much want to play 2. 1 maybe, because 1 is kind of like a good one-off game, but 3 is just excellent. There's only one game on the system that can top that, and that's number 1. Final Fantasy. Alright, Final Fantasy kicked off a series. Many people are familiar with the games that came later, usually starting with 7 for some god-awful reason. But I was there when it first came out. I remember first breaking it open, and I was not impatient. I was so used to action, I did not realize that you had to actually select from the menus. It was my first RPG ever. And this was excellent. When I got into it, I got hooked. This is what hooked me on role-playing games to begin with. And it really was worthwhile checking out. All the work and effort put into this. It pushed the NES to the max as far as graphically and just sound-wise, just how large the game. Most NES games did not take that long to beat. Even Dragon Warrior, the original Dragon Warrior, did not take that long to beat. This one could take you a good long while. You had plenty of secrets to explore, but it was still straightforward enough that you could get the hang of it even at a young age. Because I was still relatively young. I think I was 9 or 10 when it came out. And I took to it very quickly. This game has had a lot of remasters lately, which, you got the PSP version, which is supposed to be the definitive version. So, of course, you can't really get it anywhere. But you've got GBA versions. You got Final Fantasy Origins. You got a lot of these. And Final Fantasy Origins you can download on the PlayStation 3 if you want. Or you can do like I've done, and these new pixel-perfect remasters are available. And I've really enjoyed it. I was skeptical when it first came out, but I have really been enjoying my replay through of Final Fantasy. And it is fun. I have been enjoying it. I've liked the music from it, and it still has a lot of the, charm from the original games. So if you get a chance, you should check this one out. Out of all of them, this is probably the one RPG game I have beaten the most out of all of the RPGs that I've played. Because you can pick it up, you can play it, and by the time you start to get bored of the systems, that's all right, you're already at the end. The only thing I would say is negative about it is that last part, that Chaos Temple, is hard as nails. So with that being said, I hope you've enjoyed this list. Keep in mind, these are my opinions of the games I have beaten. I only allow myself to do games I've beaten. So, let me know what your thoughts were. What are your favorites? Zelda 2? Ikari Warriors? Ikari Warriors 2. I liked that one. A lot of cool games on the NES. It was an excellent system. But let me know in the comments below. But we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.